The decision to stop trying is never a single dramatic moment. It is not a declaration made in anger or a threat issued in desperation. It is a quiet, internal shift, a final grain of sand that settles in the scales, bringing a long and wearying imbalance to an end. It begins not with a bang, but with a sigh, a deep, soul-level exhalation of energy you can no longer afford to spend. And when you finally reach this point, when the last vestige of hope for reciprocity dies, she doesn't just notice your absence. She begins to feel it, not as an immediate shock, but as a gradual cooling of a space she had grown accustomed to thinking was warmed by her own light. At first, there is nothing to notice. The initial silence is mistaken for a pause. When the good morning text doesn't appear, she might, for a fleeting second, wonder if her phone is broken. When you don't call to hear about her day, she might assume you're busy. This is the period of quiet assumption, where her world remains intact because she believes the architecture of your attention is merely undergoing temporary maintenance. She doesn't feel the first few missing bricks because she never truly looked at the foundation. She only enjoyed the shelter it provided. The texts she used to ignore, the plans she used to dismiss, or treat as optional. The emotional reassurance she would siphon from you without offering a drop in return, their absence is not yet a void. It is simply a quiet moment. But then, the silence begins to deepen. It stretches from hours into a day, then two. The spaces where your energy used to live, the digital pings that punctuated her afternoon, the late-night conversations where you poured fuel on her drama, the steady stream of validation begin to echo. This is when the first faint tremor of unease stirs within her. It's not a conscious thought of loss, not yet. It's more primal. It's the feeling of a constant, low-grade hum that has powered her environment suddenly switching off. The room is the same, but the air is stiller. She might find herself picking up her phone more often. Not to contact you, but to check if she's missed something. The instinctual gesture of someone checking a familiar clock that is inexplicably stopped. This is the phase where reality, patient and inexorable, begins its slow sink into her consciousness. Because while she was busy testing your patience, while she was leveraging your interest, you were the one holding everything together. You were the silent engineer of the entire dynamic. Every text was a thread you spun to bridge the gap between her world and yours. Every call was a pillar you erected to support the weight of her indifference. Every plan was a floor you laid down on the uncertain ground of her commitment. You were the builder, the architect, and the maintenance crew for a connection she merely inhabited. And when that effort stops, when the builder finally lays down his tools and walks away, the entire structure begins to collapse. It doesn't fall all at once. It groans and creaks first. A joke she hears and instinctively turns to share with you finds no recipient. A moment of minor frustration arises, and the familiar venting channel to you is closed. The attention she took for granted, the attention she often framed as pressure or neediness, transforms. It ceases to be an external force and becomes an internal absence. It is no longer something she manages, but something she misses. It becomes the silence she can't escape. Late at night, scrolling through her phone, the reality of the emptiness becomes undeniable. The screen, once a portal to your steady presence, is now just a device. She realizes, perhaps for the first time with clarity, how rare it is to have someone who cared enough to try, consistently and without malice. Someone who saw the chaos and didn't run from it, but tried to build order within it. The weight of your past effort becomes palpable only in its present lack. And that's when the understanding truly hits her, not as an idea, but as a cold sensation in the pit of her stomach. She is not being punished. She is not being played. She is not even being ignored in the way one ignores a nuisance. She is being replaced. The energy she once commanded, the emotional real estate she occupied rent-free in your mind, has been reclaimed. In its place, you have installed peace. Your peace. A quiet, self-sufficient state that does not require her presence, her permission, or her participation. The drama she mistook for passion has been evicted, and the quiet she mistook for boredom has moved in. And in the new, profound silence, She is left alone with the one thing she was always trying to outrun, the unadorned truth of what she had, and what she, through her own inaction and disregard, has allowed to slip away forever. The silence you create is not a vacuum. It is a mirror. In the beginning, she can look away, filling it with noise and distraction. But as the days stretch on, the mirror remains, and she is forced, in fleeting, uncomfortable glances, to see the reflection of what her world looks like without the frame of your effort. This is when the quiet begins to curdle into a dawning, unsettling realization. Your silence is not a tactic or a punishment. It is a consequence. And it begins to expose a fundamental truth her ego had meticulously insulated her from. You were not just a participant in the relationship. You were its foundational support. You were the glue. This revelation does not arrive with the force of a lightning bolt, but with the slow, creeping chill of a fog. It starts in the small, unguarded moments. She's in the middle of a laugh with friends, and a thought, sharp and unbidden, slices through the merriment. You would have appreciated that. She's trying to sleep, and her mind freed from the day's distractions. Replays a moment she dismissed youth at the time she rolled her eyes at a concern you voiced. The time she made you feel like your effort was an annoyance, not a gift. These memories, which once served to inflate her sense of power, now feel different. They carry a new weight, a subtle, corrosive shame. The internal narrative begins to shift. The story of his neediness starts to crack, revealing the ugly truth of my carelessness. This is the birth of regret. It is not born from a place of pure love or a sudden understanding of your worth. It is born from a much more pragmatic, and for her, a much more terrifying place. The realization of systemic collapse. She is not mourning you, the person, yet. She is mourning the infrastructure you provided. She is realizing that the constant, reliable flow of attention, validation, and emotional labor was not a natural resource, but a well you alone were digging day after day. And now the well is run dry because the well digger has left. The whispers start, subtle and insidious. He wasn't that bad. Maybe I pushed him too far. What if he doesn't come back this time? The deeper, unspoken answer to that question is the one that truly terrifies her. You won't. Because the man who walks away after giving his all is not the same man who once begged for scraps. In the crucible of that final, weary decision, a transformation occurred. You learned the profound power of not trying. You learned that your value is not a currency to be spent in the desperate marketplace of her approval, but a truth to be held within. You discovered that peace is not found in winning someone over, but in releasing the need to do so. To return to proving your worth to someone who was blind to it when you laid it at her feet would be to unlearn the most valuable lesson of your life. It would be a form of self-betrayal you are no longer capable of. Her regret, therefore, is not noble. It is not the romantic ache of a lost soulmate. It is the panic of a tenant who finally understands that the landlord, whom she constantly complained to and never paid, has not only evicted her, but has also taken the very blueprint of the building with him. It is the realization that effort is not a guarantee, that attention is a finite gift, and that no one, no matter how patient, is obligated to keep pouring their essence into a vessel that gives nothing back but its own emptiness. Your departure was not marked by a dramatic scene or a final, cutting argument. The most powerful exits are often silent. You did not walk out. You detached. You retracted your emotional energy, and in doing so, you turned off the lights in a room she had grown accustomed to living in. This emotional detachment is a force more powerful than any confrontation. An argument is a connection, however toxic. A shouted goodbye is an acknowledgement. But detachment is a quiet, absolute severance. It is the cold, calm acknowledgement that she no longer holds any sway over your inner world, not your mood. Right. Not your peace, not your sense of self. The strings she used to pull, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, have been cut. And the silence that follows is the loudest sound she has ever heard. Because it is the sound of her own irrelevance to your peace. It is the sound of you, finally, choosing yourself. The initial shock of your absence gives way to a period of performance. This is the stage where pride digs its trenches and mounts its most vigorous defense. She will not crumble, at least not publicly. She will not admit that the silence is anything more than a welcome relief. And so she acts. She becomes a curator of a new reality, one in which your departure is framed as her liberation. Pictures are posted smiling with friends, embarking on new adventures, captioned with vague quotes about finding oneself and releasing what no longer serves you. The laughter in these photos is a little too wide, the poses a little too deliberate. It is a carefully staged production of wellness, broadcast to the world, and most importantly, to you. She needs you to see that she is fine, that she is better, that your absence is a gift she has gracefully accepted. But a performance, by its very nature, is exhausting to maintain. The energy required to project an image of unbothered freedom is immense, and when the curtain falls, the actor is left alone in a quiet, empty theater. The distractions eventually fade. The friends go home, the parties end, the social media notifications trickle to a halt. In the ensuing quiet, the void you left behind is no longer a theoretical concept. It becomes a tangible, echoing space inside her. It is in these unscripted moments, in the dead air of a Tuesday night, that the crack in her facade begins to form. The noise she used to cover it with is gone, and she is left with nothing but the hollow sound of her own thoughts. It is here that the memories begin to intrude, not as welcome nostalgia, but as unwelcome accusations. They are no longer about the structure you built, but about the spirit you've brought to it. She doesn't just remember your texts. She remembers how you could make her laugh with a perfectly timed observation, how your humor could disarm her worst moods. She doesn't just remember your listening. She remembers the quality of your attention, the way you made her feel heard in a way that no one else bothered to. She replays the moments you stayed, the times you weathered her storms and fixed what was broken, not because you had to, but because you chose to. And she is forced to contrast that with the moments she pushed you away, the times she dismissed your effort as desperation, mistook your loyalty for weakness, and interpreted your consistency as a lack of options. This is where the true destruction begins. It is not the destruction of her social life or her daily routine, but the destruction of her internal narrative. The story she told herself that she was the prize, and your persistence was merely the proof starts to rot from the inside out. What truly unravels her is not the fact of your leaving, but the manner in which you left. You stopped fighting. You stopped explaining, defending, and trying to earn a softness she deliberately withheld. Your fight, which she often framed as drama or neediness, was the very thing that made her feel important. Your persistence was the engine of her desirability. It fed the central illusion of her ego that she was so inherently valuable, so irreplaceable that no matter how she acted, you would never truly withdraw. Your silence shatters that illusion. It tells a different, colder story. A story where her chaos is no longer interesting to you. A story where your own peace has become a higher priority than her drama. A story where she is demoted from the main character in your life to a mere footnote in your past. This is what her ego cannot process or accept. Because for a woman who fed on the certainty of your devotion, this emotional starvation feels like a kind of death. This craving for validation is a powerful addiction, and you were her primary supplier. Even from a distance, even after the romantic connection had frayed, she needed to know she still had access to your emotions. She needed the reassurance that she still lived in your head, that her actions could still provoke a reaction. It was the last vestige of control. By stopping completely, by becoming a closed system of calm indifference, you deny her that access. You cut off the supply. In taking back your power, your energy, and your dignity, you hold up a stark, an unforgiving mirror to the one-sided nature of your past dynamic. You become a walking, breathing reminder that love is not a one-way street, and that effort, no matter how profound, cannot survive forever in a vacuum. The indifference you now radiate, born not from hatred, but from crystal clear clarity, is the most painful truth she must face. She had something real, and she, through her own carelessness, broke it. The transformation that occurs within a man who has truly detached is not a performance for an audience. It is a quiet internal revolution. What she begins to perceive from a distance is not bitterness or anger, but a profound and unsettling peace. This peace is not the empty stillness of surrender, but a vibrant, earned tranquility that radiates from a core that has been reforged. It was built in the silent, lonely hours of the night. Through the brutal process of overthinking every detail until clarity finally emerged, it was forged in the heartbreaks that, instead of breaking him, taught him the non-negotiable value of his own self-worth. It was cemented by the conscious, deliberate act of letting go of people who had proven through their actions that they never deserved the loyalty he so freely gave. This piece is not an act. It is a monument to his own survival. Its energy is unmistakably authentic. This shift manifests in everything you do, yet nothing you say. You begin to move through the world differently. There is a new economy to your motion and your words. You no longer feel the compulsive need to explain your worth, to justify your decisions, or to negotiate for the basic respect that should be freely given. You stop giving chances to those who have consistently treated you as an option. This is not a policy enacted out of spite, but a boundary born from the simple, sober understanding that your energy is a finite and precious resource. You are no longer a charity for emotional vampires. This internal recalibration is invisible, but its effects are seismic, and she, tuned to the subtle frequencies of your energy even from a distance, feels the tremor. The more indifferent you become, the more obsessed she grows. This is a fundamental law of human dynamics. Your silence ceases to be a void and becomes a mystery. You have become an unknown variable in the equation she once believed she had solved. The man she thought was an open book, predictable in his devotion, transparent in his needs, has closed his cover. You are now a text she can no longer read, and this unknowingness is a form of psychological gravity she cannot resist. Her ego, which thrived on solving the simple puzzle of your predictable reactions, is now confronted with a riddle it cannot solve. A man who is genuinely unmoved by her. This is when the dynamic completes its inevitable flip. She begins to orbit you. She finds herself checking your social media not with nostalgia, but with a detective's intensity, searching for clues in a new picture, analyzing a vague post, trying to decipher the code of your new life. The texts begin to arrive tentative, probing things disguised as casual innocence. A "Hey, how have you been?" sent into the ether. "Hey, I saw this and it reminded me of you." They are not attempts at reconciliation. They are emotional probes. They are fishing lines cast into the calm waters of your existence, hoping to stir a wave, any wave. Just to confirm that she can still create a ripple in your world, but you will feel the shift in the very tone of these messages. The confidence is gone, replaced by a hesitancy, a nervous energy. Because now, for the first time, she is the one seeking validation. She is the one replaying every detail of her own messages, wondering if they were clever enough, casual enough to lure you into a response. She is chasing the ghost of your attention the way you once chased the substance of hers. This is the raw, unadulterated power of walking away in silence. You didn't need to orchestrate a revenge. You didn't need to have the last word in an argument. You simply needed to stop. You needed to withdraw the one currency she understood, your effort in doing so. You held up a final, undeniable mirror to the truth. You forced her to watch as the dynamic she controlled disintegrated, and a new one, where she holds no power, was born. The control she mistook for her own cleverness was in fact a gift you were granting her through your participation. The moment you stopped playing, the game was over. Your silence became the teacher, and its lesson was a single, brutal sentence. You are no longer the architect of my emotions. Your approval is no longer the currency of my worth. Your presence is no longer the center of my world. And in the quiet that follows, she is left with the chilling realization that the man she thought would never leave just did not by slamming a door, but by closing a chapter, and in his calm, resolute absence, she is finally, terrifyingly alone with the consequence of her own neglect. The story does not end with a reunion or a dramatic confrontation. It ends not with her, but within you. The initial acute pain of withdrawal has long since passed, metabolized not into bitterness, but into a clear-eyed, unwavering clarity. You have learned the most valuable and painful of life's equations, that love without a foundation of mutual respect is merely a form of emotional servitude, and that affection offered without reciprocity is, in its essence, an act of slow self-destruction. You no longer mistake the anxious grip of attachment for the steady hand of loyalty. You no longer confuse the exhausting performance of effort for the quiet truth of a genuine connection. You have seen firsthand what happens when you pour the deepest parts of your heart into a vessel that is not only cracked, but pointed away from you. And instead of allowing that experience to curdle your spirit, you have allowed it to refine you. You became better, not broken. Your silence is no longer an empty space. It is now filled with a profound and purposeful energy. You are building again, but this time, the architecture is for you alone. You are not constructing a monument for someone else to admire. You are laying the foundation for a life of your own design. This is not a project of revenge, but one of rebirth. Every day, your focus sharpens, turning from the fog of someone else's emotions to the clear path of your own goals. Every night, your peace deepens, becoming less of a novelty and more of a permanent state of being. You have realized in your bones that walking away from her was not an act of weakness or surrender. It was the ultimate expression of wisdom. The man who stops trying does not lose the woman. He loses the debilitating illusion that his worth is something to be awarded by another. And in that loss, he finds everything. You are no longer chasing love from a place of lack. You are in the process of becoming the kind of man that a mature, authentic love cannot afford to lose. You are cultivating a wholeness that makes you a source, not a drain. And this is where the story finds its true and final balance. The greatest revenge is not a triumphant display of how wrong she was. It is the quiet, relentless act of living so completely right, so aligned with your own purpose and peace, that her presence, her opinions, and her very memory fade into a state of utter irrelevance. She becomes a ghost in your narrative, a character from a previous volume that has no bearing on the current chapter. You no longer require her validation to feel complete. You no longer crave her attention to feel seen. You no longer even need the apology she will likely never give, because her enduring absence is the apology. It is the final, conclusive proof that you are pouring your water into a desert. You have reclaimed the one thing she, through her actions, tried to take from you, your sovereign right to your own peace. And this peace ceases to be a mere feeling and becomes your quiet, unassailable power. It is the anchor that keeps you grounded in every storm, the compass that guides you through uncertainty. While you are building this stable, centered life, she drifts. You can sense it even from a distance. She moves between distractions, between new people and new situations, trying to find in the eyes of others the reflection of worth that she once saw so clearly in yours. But she is trying to replicate a feeling without understanding its source. She is trying to find in the external world what she killed in her own backyard. The connections she forms will feel hollow, because they are built on the shaky ground of attention-seeking, not the solid rock of genuine connection. They will lack the depth, the calm, the grounded energy you provided. They will be noise, and she will slowly realize that what she is truly craving is the silence you now possess. One day, perhaps years from now, a sliver of information will find its way to you. You will hear, through the intricate web of mutual acquaintances or the passive observation of a digital footprint, that she has seen you, that she has witnessed a glimpse of your life composed, happy, untouchable in your serenity. And in that moment, she will be forced to a realization she will likely never voice, a truth that will settle in her soul with the weight of a tombstone. You were never the one who lost her. She was the one who lost a man who would have moved mountains for her, who would have weathered any storm by her side. Until he finally learned the most important lesson of L2, stop destroying his own landscape for someone who didn't appreciate the view. You were the prize she held in her hands, and in her carelessness, she let you slip through her fingers, only to watch you become more valuable than she ever imagined. Your victory is not in her regret, but in your freedom. It is the quiet, permanent victory of a man who finally chose himself, and in doing so, won back his entire world.